You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. Gold, crude oil, corn, soybeans, and more. With so many tradable products, the futures options market can be an intimidating place. How can you possibly keep track of the latest trading developments across so many different products? Don't worry, we've got you covered. Welcome to This Week in Futures Options, the program designed to help active futures options traders stay on top of this ever-changing marketplace. Each week, we'll break down the top trades, hot products, volatility explosions, and much more. This Week in Futures Options streams live, so be sure to check out our live stream via the Mixlr app. That's MIXLR. Or join our live chat room at mixlr.com/options-insider. Whether you're an experienced veteran or a newcomer looking to separate the wheat from the lean hogs, This Week in Futures Options has the information you can't find anywhere else. This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This Week in Futures Options is also brought to you by FTSE Russell, a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. For more information, please visit ftserussell.com, cboe.com, and cmegroup.com. And now, get ready to break down the latest futures options trading activity. It's time for This Week in Futures Options.
All right, everybody. That music means it is Thursday. It is 1:30 p.m. Central. It is 2:30 p.m. Eastern. It is time, once again, for TWIFO, This Week in Futures Options, the program where we break down all the action going on the futures options side of the fence. What's going to make it onto the show? We never know. You have to tune in each week to find out. Could be equities, could be ags, could be metals, could be FX. You never know. You have to tune in to TWIFO each week. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-compelling, at least we tend to think so, Options Insider Radio Network. Of course, reminding you, if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing. It really does help the legion of new folks continue to discover the network. You know, we've been doing this 15, almost 16 years now, yet it's hard to believe there's new people discovering it all the time. This year, every month has been a new record for our network. So, thanks to all of you for continuing to devour our content and drive up our bandwidth bills. And if you like what you hear, keep rating and reviewing wherever you get our content on all the different platforms under the sun. You can also do it via the app stores for our various mobile apps. No shortage of ways for you folks to consume the content. Of course, if you want to go above and beyond, not just with the network content that's coming at you, usually a couple of shows a day, but also you want to go above and beyond with some exclusive content like great pro Q&As. We had Tony Saliba coming in to answer your questions in the hot seat earlier this week. Options Oddities every Friday, breaking down the week's worth of unusual activity. Live access to this and everything else we do throughout the week. And then, of course, great giveaways like our pro trading crates, which, no, you can't buy those. Those are only available for our pro members. Where do you go to learn more about all that fun stuff? theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go. And let's see who's joining us in the CME Group and FTSE Russell hot seat today. I am pleased to welcome on a newcomer to the program and indeed to the network. He is Martin Franchi, the CEO of Ninja Trader Group. Martin, welcome to the TWIFO program.
Mark, thank you for having me. Super excited to be here today and joining the network for the first time, hopefully first of many.
Yes. Well, Martin, as we are wont to do with all of our first-timers here on the network, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a bit of an overview of your background in the futures and futures options markets, as well as what it is you do day to day over there at NinjaTrader.
Awesome. So, appreciate the opportunity to provide a little background. So I've, as you mentioned, I'm the CEO of NinjaTrader Group. I've been with the business for 14 years now. And NinjaTrader Group, for those who are less familiar, we are an FCM, and we're a little unique in the space because we focus exclusively on the individual trader. We focus on retail. And as an FCM, we are currently supporting, I don't have the exact number in front of me, almost 100,000 active traders in our community and over 700,000 people in the community that are using our software kind of as they're trying to master this, futures trading, whether they're doing it through simulation, et cetera. So that's what we focus on in NinjaTrader. That makes us a little bit different. Prior to NinjaTrader, I actually came from the CPG world, consumer packaged goods, food industry, where I kind of started my career. And that business where I was at was a more traditional user of futures products, with hedging, massive manufacturing of products to kind of protect against the risk of fluctuation in commodity price. Got some exposure to futures there, grew up kind of fascinated with markets and was really excited to join NinjaTrader as it was kind of coming out of the startup mode many, many years ago. And then, kind of like I mentioned, what we do, we focus on the individual and we also focus on futures. That also makes us a little unique. We do not offer, we're not a broker dealer. You're not going to trade stocks through your account with us. We focus on futures and we focus on retail, and that makes us very, very unique in the space.
Well, there's a lot of unique things to discuss on the show. I'm looking forward to it, Martin. But before we do that, we have to commence things the way we always do on the show. It is time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
It's time to find out what's rallying on the light side and falling to the dark side at CME Group this week. It's time for the Movers and Shakers Report.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Movers and Shakers Report, the portion of the show where we break down everything, lighting it up, I should say, to the light side, a.k.a. the upside, and to the dark side out there at CME this week. And this is another one of our, shall we say, heavily skewed weeks. Recently, it's been mostly 50-50, which has been kind of refreshing. But before that, in the last couple of months before that, we saw days when it was difficult to make a top or bottom five. We're not quite to that extreme today, listeners. We can do a bottom five, but not much beyond it. Of course, if you want to see these reports for yourselves prior to showtime, CME Group tweets them out right before showtime, so you can follow them over there at CME. Of course, we tweet them out ahead of the show as well. And you'll see that it's very green on the screen. That said, Martin, you are our guest, so I will give you pride of place. Where should we begin our journey this week, to the light side or to the dark side?
I would have to say, given the amount of light we are seeing, let's start there, Mark.
All right. There's a lot. We could do the whole show just on all that green. There's a lot of green on the screen this week, Martin. But to the light side we go. Again, let's look for our frequent offenders out there, listeners. Those are usually lumber. Those are Bitcoin and nat gas. One of those three, two of those three, all three of those usually can be found somewhere to the light side and to the dark. Let's see how many we could find this week. A bit of a Where's Waldo. To the light side we go. Number 5, heating oil. So off to energy first, up 6.24%. It was number 3 in the other direction last week, off about 5.3%. Number 4, we're off to the equities. The E-mini Dow up 6.32%. Number 3, still hanging in the equities, the E-mini S&P Mid-Cap 400. Say that 5 times fast, up 6.47%. Number 2, our old friend, the Russell 2000, up 6.89%. It's been a good week here for small caps. They were number 13, so they're outside of our top 5 last week. They were up a mere 0.75% last week, so big jump this week for small caps. And the number 1 light side mover, one of our 3 frequent offenders listeners, it's Bitcoin, up 8.83%. So a lot of upside to be found in the crypto space this week. Now, to the dark side we go. Number 5, rough rice, off 2.38%. Number 4, we go from rice, still hanging out in the ag sector, but getting into dairy with the class 3 milk, off 2.96%. It was tied for number 4 in the other direction last week with cattle. up 2.5% exactly. So kind of giving up what it made last week and then some. Number 3, back to the Ags, still hanging out in the Ags, really. It's Oats, off 4.93%. It was number 2 to the dark side last week as well, off nearly 8%. And again, before you get excited, Oats does about 30 contracts a week. So probably not going to be hanging our hat out in Oats. Same for number 2, Palladium, not a huge options player, but a big mover this week, off 7.67%. And our number 1 dark side offender this week, Lumber, once again, rocking and rolling this week to the dark side, off 10.77%. It was number 1 in the other direction last week, up 7.06%. You already know the saga of Lumber. I won't bore you with the details yet again, listeners. Not exactly a huge options mover. But that said, CME did launch some new bite-sized lumber contracts recently, so maybe that will start driving a little bit more paper. Speaking of bite-sized, that leads nicely into our next topic, which I think we're going to start in the equities.
It's time to explore the volatility swings, skew changes, and hot options trades in your favorite indices. It's time to talk equities.
All right, everybody, welcome to the wonderful world of equities. You guys know where to go to find those reports for yourselves. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO is the place to go to get these reports. Don't go into that asset class, go down 4 to equity indexes. Then we're going to hang out in there to start. But Martin, before we get into all that fun going on in the world of equities, one of the reasons I wanted to start in equities, one of the reasons you're joining us this week is because you have some interesting new, shall we say, bite-sized offerings in the equities and as well as a bunch of other complexes. So what are we talking about? What are these event contracts you're bringing to the table here, Martin?
I love that we're talking about event contracts. It's something we're really focused on and tremendously excited about. And yeah, you're right. Before I get into a little more detail on what they are, there's really 3 complexes, right? So you've got the equity complex, the metals complex, and the energy complex. And traders are gravitating to the equity side of it, which is expected in the retail space. But the way that we think about these products, and this kind of aligns with what NinjaTrader thinks about really every day, is really retail and the retail community. We think futures need to be more accessible, right? There's a bit of an underappreciated asset class and an underappreciated kind of community of active retail traders. We feel historically there was a little bit of a dismissal of this crowd. NinjaTrader was founded by traders creating professional tools for the everyday trader. And when we think about accessibility, when we think about engaging products, event contracts is an extension of that, right? So much of what we do recently has been dedicated to kind of product development relative to new mobile experiences for these products. But you're right on, these are bite-sized, right? These are accessible, approachable, straightforward ways for active traders or people who are kind of new to futures and trying to get into the space. They are extremely, like I said, I use the word approachable, but really all you're doing is predicting where you believe the market is going to close that day. When you think about there's geopolitical events, there's uncertainty with all these different things. There's this crowd of folks who showed up at NinjaTrader's door wanting to be able to predict, wanting to be able to profit from their opinion. And there's not a really simple way to do that, right? When you think about the complexity relative to becoming a professional trader and an active trader, this is a simple user interface. It's you're taking a position, yes or no. It's really that simple. And it's on these products that are, widely known, that are, commonly traded by the active trader community and really, really well known by what we'll say is like an adjacent kind of community of folks who are interested in getting into futures. You're talking about the index complex, top metals contracts, and the energies. So super excited about it. I think CME did a great job. We're proud to be one of their partners, introducing those into the space.
Well, we can certainly get behind any effort to arm that retail and futures options audience. Clearly the audience for this program as well. So we can get behind what you're putting down here, Martin. It keeps with the spirit of the show. But let's get into that a little bit. You mentioned we have these event type contracts. I'm looking at some of them right now. on the CME Group website. You have, will the NASDAQ 100 close above 11,400? Will the E-mini S&P close above 3850? You kind of touched on the duration a little bit. These are very short term, 1 day for the most part, but walk us through the duration, the contract size, and what I'm trading here.
Yeah, so I mean, think about like what happened when the war with Russia and Ukraine began, right? How many traders wanted to take a position in energies and just really didn't know how, right? This is a good example where they could have quickly said, hey, I'm going to take a side on this today. So, from an investment perspective, right? These are options, and basically, you can you're trading for between 25 cents is the lowest value you can get in, the lowest premium you can get in, and they go in 25-cent increments up to $19.75. So it's a real kind of, like I said, accessible and approachable sized product. When you think about retail participation in futures markets, and you go back in time, which we can talk about later in the show if you'd like, the products were so, I'll use the word outrageously sized. If you're using a retail lens, right? You would have to have significant amounts of capital to get into these markets. And over time, exchanges led by the CME have what we call size innovation and made these products smaller, and which has kind of widened up the ability for retail participation. This is a continuation of that with these daily options, right? Where you have an option to select where you believe this market is going to close. There's 10 products out there today, right? And they're intraday tradable, so they trade like options, but it really has predefined risk. Where you're going to end at the end of the day. So that's how we think about it.
And you mentioned the kind of pricing. Let's get into that a little bit, because they're effectively 25 cents to $20. It's an interesting price range, the $20 being effectively the 100 probability contract. We've seen other contracts in the event space in the past try to tackle this in different ways. Some trying to go from, effectively the 1 to 100 pricing, trying to line up with effectively probability. So if you see a contract trading for $25, it's about a 25% probability of it happening. How did you guys arrive on this 25 cents to $20 range?
We work with CME and we listen to our customers, and we try to think through their lens all the time, right? And that's, I think, one of the advantages that NinjaTrader has is this huge community that we can listen to. When we think about, trying to make things extremely straightforward, this 25-cent increment, this $20 or zero cash settlement is just about as simple as it gets in terms of being able to understand, the product and your predefined risk. So again, it's still tradable intraday, but the majority of customers are going in and they're predicting where the market's going to close, and end of the day, they're going to know where they stand. And the community's actually been really, really interested in this. One thing I think is important to note, Mark, is this is a kind of new category in futures, right? Even though prediction markets have technically been around for a long time, on exchange regulated, like this is very, very new. And NinjaTrader we take it really seriously how we want to educate and provide content to active traders and anybody interested in futures. So we're getting a lot of interest. So there's a ton of inbound questions. We've got a huge team of people who are answering questions for folks. And, as we are educating consumers, as we're providing more content, as the CME is providing more content, they kind of there's been this gradual climb. Remember, this is a month-old endeavor, just barely over a month, I believe, at this point. And, we have a couple thousand contracts trading a day already, which is exceeding expectation, and it's across a broad range of hundreds of customers. So when we think about like how we size the product, how we spec the product, and how we work with the CME, I think it goes right back to our ability to listen to the community, receive feedback, and work with exchanges on these types of innovations.
Let's look at some of these examples here, listeners. Like right now, will the Russell 2000 close above 1810 is one of these event contracts you could trade. It ends in about looks like a couple hours here. And right now, the Russell 2000 is trading 1824 and about a half. So obviously well north of that 1810 level. So the yeses have it right now. That's trading. Yes is trading $18.25. Remember, the max is 20. So as closer you get to 20, the more probable, the more likely that event is. Or you could say no, and that no is $2.75 right now. And obviously, if it does close below 18.10, then of course that will go to $20. So very clearly delineated structure at the outset, Martin, where 25 cents all the way to $20, something people can usually wrap their heads around. And then also, we should probably clarify, they don't have to hold these all the way to expiration, right? They could sell these out at any time, right?
Absolutely. And especially the active traders who are engaging with these products now are doing just that, right? They're not holding them. They're trading them intraday. And a lot of the customers who are newer to futures and want to kind of lean into that straightforward nature of the product, they're holding to the end of the day.
And you mentioned they're fairly new, but you're already seeing some uptick in interest out there. What are you seeing out there from the clients? Who is using these things and what are they using them for?
Yeah, it's a mix, right? So it's a mix of active traders who've been trading with us for a very, very long time. And then this kind of new cohort of futures curious people who have been kind of waiting for something simple like this. So one other thing to point out is, this is available today for those of you, and we can get into this more in the conversation, Mark. These are available today through Tradevate, which is a subsidiary of NinjaTrader Group. They're not available to our full community right now in a major way. I'll clarify that later, but we're going to be introducing these to the broader audience of NinjaTrader over like the coming days and weeks. Most of our customers know about this already. And as we see this kind of ramped up introduction and ramped up content and education that we're committed to, we've already seen a real gradual climb in interest and activity within the markets. We're expecting it to be pretty tremendous, and we're expecting this growth to continue.
So this is only available right now through the Tradevate subsidiary. They, of course, has been on the show in the past. That's the only way to trade these right now, at least for you folks over there at NinjaTrader.
Yes, I believe you had a good friend of mine, Rick Tomzik, on the show talking crypto not too long ago. But yeah, you're correct. So through our Tradevate subsidiary right now, that's where primary focus is. And Tradevate has really modern cutting edge technology we're leaning into, including all of our cloud infrastructure and our mobile technology, which is why we think of this consumer who's coming for this product to really be a mobile first consumer. So what we did, leveraging the Tradevate technology, was we created like a web and mobile experience that's dedicated entirely to event contracts. That's pretty unique because most others who are offering this, it's kind of hard to find them within the trading interface. You really have to kind of want to trade them. We have a product specifically built for this, designed, researched, and developed specifically for event contracts only. And it's available through Tradevate right now, and it'll be available through the NinjaTrader brand very, very soon. I don't want to give away the date because I'm not sure if my marketing people can get mad at me, but coming soon.
It's just you and I talking, Martin. No one else listening. We could break secrets here. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's a safe space.
Yeah, I'll have my marketing guy staring at my office any minute now. The compliance guy is looking at me like I've done something wrong.
I like the term you used earlier, futures curious. That has been very much the use case for these products in the past, a way to kind of a gateway, an entry point for a lot of people who maybe were intrigued by the world of futures, but for whatever reason, they didn't want to dip their toes in these waters. Like you mentioned, maybe the contracts were too big or it was just too complicated. These kind of straightforward type event contracts seem like a good way to bridge that gap and bring in some new people who otherwise may not be trading futures. Have you seen any of that? Have you seen new participants coming into the market who maybe otherwise wouldn't be trading these?
So I think there's even a bigger story here where, as you think about the kind of democratization in the equity space, kind of going back to 2018-ish, 2019, really when most of the broker dealers kind of capitulated to this zero commission model and this rise of retail, and also crypto as well, like the self-directed investor, the crypto enthusiast. With all of these folks who have joined the self-directed investing and trading world, and there's this journey, right, where all of a sudden, hey, I'm finding options. These are amazing, right? And more than anybody, right? Some of these folks are like, what are these futures things? And they get there, and I feel like the feedback we get from our community and those who kind of engage with us with a little bit of uncertainty is this is kind of, there's a little bit of like a pinnacle here, right? It's like, is this too advanced? Is this scary for me? and we don't want people to trade if they don't understand, right? So that's why we focus so much on education. What's happening is there's a group of these folks who are showing up, and the retail community has grown so tremendously outside of futures. And there's this kind of what we call the spillover effect, right? Event contracts is an extension of speaking to that audience who traditionally, as I mentioned earlier, we feel has been underserved, and having something to say, hey, listen, this is simple. This is straightforward. This is approachable. It's cost effective. Predict where you think the market's going to close. And because we're developing this product innovation at the exchange level, is really starting to speak to this audience who's been underserved, but is growing really, really quickly.
Yeah, all the headlines, all the talking points over the last year and change, certainly in the whole meme stock palooza last year, was the spillover effect, I guess you can call it, from Robinhood cutting the commissions down to zero and all the crypto folks also discovering the world of equities and markets all at the same time. So there has been a big crossover effect into these markets, but a lot of people haven't really talked as much about the retail futures segment. So I'm glad to see, A, that you're focusing on that, because like I said, Martin, that is the core audience for this show. And B, it seems like there's an interesting and underserved audience there waiting to be tapped, Martin.
And think of it, this is an interesting one because you brought up meme stocks. Do you remember, and this was short-lived, but being a futures guy, being an FCM, was something that we paid close attention to. The meme stock crowd for a very short period of time was thinking about silver.
Yes, they thought there would be a silver squeeze.
Yeah, they went for silver for a moment there. And the reality was there wasn't a real great way to voice your opinion on where silver was going. So we had a bunch of folks, hey, I want to open a futures account. I want to start trading silver. We're like, wait, what is going on? Who is this crowd, right? We saw them at our doorstep. If there was an event contract available at that point, they could have taken a position right there, really simply, without having to understand all the nuance around futures, right? So it's kind of funny when you brought up the meme stocks. I think about that quite a bit, especially with the metals complex, the events contracts was introduced. Like, this is just kind of a simple way to take a position, So yes, the answer is there are people coming to the door of NinjaTrader looking for simplicity, looking for straightforward products, looking for education. And I don't want to, I want to make sure I also focus on the fact that we've got a massive audience of active traders as well, and they're trading these too. So it's really cool to see.
It is fascinating to see. That's a good point, too. That would have been very interesting this time last year when everyone was betting there's going to be a great silver squeeze. And you're right, the products available to them, SLV and a few others, really not many at all. So intriguing stuff. Speaking of intriguing stuff, we mentioned earlier in the movers and shakers that the E-mini Russell 2000 lighting it up this week, up nearly 7%. Let's get into that a little bit this week. Again, cmegroup.com/TWIFO is the place to go. Scroll down 4 slots to equity indexes, then go into U.S. Index E-mini. We're going to start, obviously, in the Russell 2000. And we're hanging out at about an 1830 coming into this segment of the show, up a whopping 83 handles just since Monday's session, of course. So you're talking up nearly 5% just from the start of the week. Of course, you go back to the end of our show last week, up nearly 7%. So quite a rock'em sock'em week for small caps. Also seeing that out here in the RUT options, over 20,000 contracts on the tape already. So that's a pretty active week for them out here as well. And of that, unlike our usual equity, nearly 30% is going up in the contract that goes out in 22 days. So that's actually refreshing. It's not just all near dated 1 day to go paper. It's actually got a little bit more time to go, which is always fun. If you're wondering what is the vol out here, listeners, about a 32.5. Back, speaking of vol, I got so excited with the event contracts, I forgot to set the table from our equity vol perspective, listeners. Coming into the start of the segment, vol pretty much down across the board. RVX, which is the VIX of the Russell 2000, 3190, down about 2 3/4 points from where it was this time last week. VIX itself, a little bit shy of 27, 2699 to be precise. That's down about 3.8 points from where it was this time last week. So obviously that spread's going to widen out. VVIX, the vol of vol itself, at about an 80.5, down about 7 1/3 points from this time last week. VolQ, so the at-the-money vol of the NASDAQ, 32 and about a half, down a little bit over 2, about 2 1/4 points. And that puts that VIX to RVX spread. So nearly 5 points, about 490. That's a little bit over a point wider than it was this time last week. And the VIX to VolQ, so the S&P 500 to NASDAQ vol spread, at about 560. That's about 1.6 points wider. So both of those spreads widening out this week. And we get into the actual products, listeners. Like we said, the at the money vol right now in this 22-day to go contract here in the Russell 2000, 32.5. So not that far away from where we're looking at in the RVX. Remember that RVX is more of a rolling 30-day metric out there, but this is pretty close at about 22 days. That's off about half a point, so the vol coming in a little bit out here this week. Skew-wise, the puts last week, 5.8% bid. This week, 8.2% bid. And the calls last week, 5.1% cheap. This week, 7.5% cheap. So the calls getting cheaper and the puts getting a little bit juicier out here, which as you're rallying up there, you kind of expect that skew to rotate a little bit. So it's not exactly surprising. And in terms of the most active contract out here, I said we're at an 1830 right now, listeners. It's the 1820 calls doing about 1,000 contracts this week. So in the money, well, I should say now in the money. I'm sure when they started trading earlier this week, they were not in the money. Yeah, they've been trading pretty much all week long, opening on Monday and then closing throughout the rest of the week. So maybe taking some of their profits and running out here. And also we saw the 1770 calls also going out in 22 days, doing nearly 1,000 contracts this week as well. A lot of that on Monday and then opening on Monday and then closing on Wednesday. So interesting, 1820s and 1770s going out in 22 days. That's where the action is right now in Russell 2000s. Also have 17 half puts, so it's not all calls all the time. Doing about 500 of those. Let's see any other interesting prints out here this week, listeners. Those seem to be the big dogs out here. Before we roll out of equities, Martin, I'm curious for you, if you're looking at the numbers, looking at the data over there on your new equity contracts, any interesting trends or developments you've seen out there in that paper you want to share with our audience?
I'm not looking at the paper right now. I don't have it live in front of me, so there's nothing that I can share. I could go about 20 feet away from me if I could see through this wall and holler at the trade desk, and I'm sure they'd have plenty of interesting things to say. I think we're just seeing that continued climb of participation is really the story that I can share.
The interesting part of it as well, you kind of touched on it earlier before we roll off of the events, is there's been a ton of data, a ton of studies about this over the years, about the utility of these types of contracts as predictive tools. Because at the end of the day, we all know the best predictive elements are the ones that have a little bit of stake behind them, a little bit of actual skin in the game. Anyone can come out there and make some sort of analyst rating about whatever the underlying is, and it doesn't really matter to them. But if you have real money on the line, you're going to do your due diligence. You're going to do your homework. So we've seen a lot of utility when it comes to the predictive power of these types of contracts. Have you seen any interesting developments along those lines, Martin?
I think that when you think about the kind of public utility of prediction markets, this is going to be something that evolves as these markets become extremely efficient, as participation grows. That's something we're actually really excited about, as I'll say, a future evolution here. When you think about prediction markets, as I mentioned earlier, have been around for a real long time. You have everything from like Google and Microsoft and political administrations using them to they've created tools to help with their success. And when you think about information discovery, forecasting, delivering real reliable information about the future, this is a great tool that will ultimately, we believe, be used. The concept of, I think you're likely familiar with the wisdom of crowds concept, right? Where a group of individuals collectively, especially if they're putting money on the line here, they have more insight than kind of a single or small group, even a group of trained professionals, people coming out of think tanks and things like that, and surveys and political polling. The potential that prediction markets has to provide more accuracy there is really, really going to be powerful down the road. It could truly go all the way to reducing uncertainty, which could lead to reduced market volatility. So we're really excited to see where it goes. I think for event contracts, because we're a month into this, it's a little bit too early. However, the public utility that these are capable of bringing over time as the markets continue to develop and participation continues to increase is something everybody should be keeping an eye on.
And we're going to keep our eye on our next product category, listeners. And as we mentioned in the movers and shakers, one of our frequent offenders back for more action this week. Bitcoin up 8.83%. So to the world of crypto we go.
It's time to explore the volatile world of Bitcoin, Ether, and more. It's time to talk about crypto.
All right, listeners, welcome to the very interesting world of crypto these days. Remember, if you want to deep dive into what's going on in these markets, I encourage you to check out our Crypto Rundown program. Airs every Monday here on the network after our Option Block show, or of course, on demand, wherever you get this content throughout the week. We do a deep dive into the world of crypto derivatives. But fortunately for you, our TWIFO reports also cover everything going on at crypto over there at CME. So let's head on into that same drop down. Pop out of equity indexes. You're going to go up 2 slots to cryptocurrencies, and you're going to hang out first in the big Bitcoin options, which are doing a surprising amount of paper. But before I get to that, Martin, I'm curious, you mentioned the underlyings that you have going on out there in the event space right now. No crypto yet, but I have to imagine that's certainly an intriguing prospect for the future. I have to imagine you would bring in an interesting subset of these futures curious people, as you call them, if you offered a crypto event offering as well.
You know, I am not in a position to break any news, and I don't have anything official. But
it's just you and me, Martin. It's just us talking. Just two guys talking about crypto.
I would say if there was a prediction market for will that come out, I think I'd take the buy side of that. But we'll see. I got nothing to share right now. But I do believe that product, if and when that product comes out, I'd be extremely exciting to offer.
Hey, that Venn diagram of the futures curious people and the crypto curious, that intersection there. A lot of people hanging out, I think, in that space, which would certainly be intriguing for an event contract. But right now, the big Bitcoin options over there at CME actually doing some paper, which you've heard us talk about this contract in the past. It's not really been lighting the world on fire in terms of volume. This week, doing 1,518 contracts. Again, that's not a ton, but for this one, this is a 5X contract. That's a ton of paper. That's many, many weeks worth of paper in the past. This product used to do 20 contracts a week. So that's actually quite a bit. The big dog out here this week, like I said, we're hanging out at about a 25.85 right now in Bitcoin. It's the October 2100s, end of month one. So these are going out in a couple of days. Actually, tomorrow. They've done 200 contracts this week. So that's where the lion's share of the action has been. But let's get a little bit smaller. That's where I think a lot of you folks like to hang out. Let's get into the micro Bitcoin offering. These have been interesting. These have been somewhat, shall we say, sporadic in their paper out here. Like this week, 1,006. So actually fewer micro Bitcoin contracts trading this week than the big ones, which is somewhat head scratching. Again, the big paper out here this week looks like it's the 20,500 puts in December going up 100 times. And looks like it might be a bit of a roll here. Yeah, they went up on Wednesday 100 times. All of that opening, as well as the 21,500 calls and the end of month December doing also 100 contracts on Wednesday. So maybe you have a bit of a time spread going up here, which is kind of fascinating. But again, smaller Bitcoin contracts, for whatever reason, not taking off. Since we're talking crypto right now, let's also hang out really quickly in ETH. They launched the big ETH options. We had Tim McCourt on the show not too long ago, listeners. I'm seeing me to talk about why they were bringing the big ETH options to the table. Of course, 50 ETH, so not really for everybody out there. It's more for the big funds, but intriguing stuff. Let's get into the micro ETH. A little bit more paper there than there is on the micro Bitcoin front. About 8,200 contracts on the tape right now. ETH hanging out 1,558, up a 257 or nearly 20% just this week. 257 handles. So nice run here for ETH this week. And in terms of the most action, it was the 18 half calls. Actually, I take it back. It was the 12 half puts in November, doing nearly 600 contracts. That's a lot this week. That was the lion's share of the action out here. Let's see. And they traded pretty much all one day, all on Monday. It looks like there was a 12 half, 1,300, 13 half spread that went up 589 times, all opening all on Monday. Then not much else the rest of the week. That's kind of the way these contracts tend to trade, listeners. The micro ETH. It's all on one day, then nothing. And so intriguing stuff. Monday was definitely the action-packed day out here in all things micro ETH. Again, if you want a deeper dive into all things crypto, listeners, check out the Crypto Rundown program. As we keep rolling with the show, listeners, right on into, we had a lot of movers and shakers this week, including a stop for heating oil out there in the energy.
It's time to tap into the deep options well of black gold, Texas tea, nat gas, and more. It's time to talk energy.
All right, everyone, welcome to the wonderful world of energy. And I joked before, we're not going to do heating oil, obviously. We talked about it on the show in the past. Not a huge options player. But our friend Nat Gas doing a little bit of paper this week and also moving a bit this week. Since Monday's session, it has rallied about 7.6%. So a big mover on the week, even if not enough to break into a huge upside week in the market this week. It takes a lot to break into our top 5 this week. So Nat Gas, right outside it, listeners. Looks like it probably would come in, let's say, in the top 10 somewhere for this week. And in terms of paper, a pretty active day, a little bit lighter than we've seen in the past. Usually it's around 400,000 contracts this time of the week. Right now, 352,000 contracts. And Nat Gas trading like an equity, pretty much almost half, 46% of that paper going up in that front D's contract. It has about 29 days to go. So we'll hang out there, listeners. In terms of where Nat Gas is right now, 588, so has rallied, like we said, quite a bit, 41 cents just over the span of this week. Vol-wise, we're getting back up there again, listeners. It's flirted with triple digits in the past, and it's almost at that again. It's at about a 98 right now, up about 3 3/4 points on the week. In terms of skew, last week, the puts 1.6% cheap. This week, 9% cheap. And the calls last week, 4.6% bid. This week, 8.8% bid. So calls where the action is this week. Not exactly surprising as we're rocketing it up. Some folks piling in to the upside out there. Even though the most active contract this week, listeners, is that DEES 4 even put. That's been trading pretty actively all week long, including today. 13,000 today, 9,000 yesterday, and 2,000 plus each Monday and Tuesday. It's like opening throughout most of the week. Total of nearly 27,000 contracts trading on the week. So that 4 even put strike, even though we've rallied away from it throughout most of the week, has been the volume leader out here this week by a substantial margin. I'm just looking to see if anything else is even close. The next closest is the 5 even put, also in December, with about 14,600 contracts, so close to half of the paper. The big day for that also today, 11,278. So it looks like maybe a bit of a 4 or 5 put vertical trading out there today. And then 2,100 or so yesterday, and the rest kind of scattered throughout the week. So a ton of these 4 even puts. That's surprising given how we've moved aggressively away from that strike throughout most of the week. It wasn't all puts all the time, though, listeners. The 8 calls also doing about 12,000 contracts this week. The big day for that actually today as well. 8,300 contracts today, 3,100 on Wednesday, and the rest kind of scattered throughout the week, close to 12,000 on the week. And then right behind that, we have the 10 even calls, 10,500 of those trading this week. Again, the big day today, 6,600 today, 3,000 on Wednesday, the rest scattered throughout the week. The 10 strike. Seems like we were talking about that quite a bit earlier in the year, listeners. Now it seems like a bit of a distant memory. In fact, someone traded the March 1 calls 7,000 times today. Straight 7,000. Nothing else trading throughout the rest of the week. So the 1 calls, listeners, that's an intriguing strike. We haven't seen a 1 strike so far this year. It's been mostly 8s, 9s, 10s, and above. So Nat Gas doing a fair bit of paper out here this week, listeners. We are kind of coming up against it. Let's see if we could squeeze in one more complex really quickly off to the Ags. We go.
It's time to get our hands dirty exploring the latest options, trades, and trends in corn, wheat, soybeans, and more. It's time to talk Ags.
All right, listeners, we had quite a few ag movers this week. Unfortunately, most of them don't do a ton of paper. We have oats off nearly 5%. Again, not a huge player. We have lumber, which falls under the softs in ags. And again, not a huge options player, off nearly 11% this week. We had rough rice off about 2.4%. And then our old friend Class 3 milk off nearly 3%. We're going to check really quickly in with the dairy here before we roll on out of here this week, listeners. It's because it's a complex we don't get to talk about a lot. And it's doing more paper. I put more in air quotes because it's still not a ton. It's closing in on 4,000 contracts this week. So you're talking over 3x what we're seeing in the big Bitcoin option. So I suppose that is something. But Class 3 milk, if you don't follow it, listeners, at about a 21.83 in that front future. That front future actually kind of unched on the week, which is interesting. You go a little bit farther out, though, and you're talking the November and December futures. Now you're talking $20.50, and then the DEES future is 18.75. So pricing in a little bit of downside the farther out you go in that term structure. In terms of these 4,000 contracts, about 20% going up in the DEES contract, which that future is about 1878. So we're going to hang out there, listeners. What is the vol? You might be asking yourself in the dairy contracts right now. It's about 20.5, off about 4 points this week. So vol coming in on the dairy complex this week. In terms of skew, last week the puts 0.5% bid. This week 2.5% bid, and the calls last week 2.2% cheap, and this week 0.6%. So calls have come in, and the puts have gotten a little bit more bid, which is kind of interesting. And in terms of action, again, it's kind of spread out all over the place here, listeners. It seems like the most active contract is the 21 even calls in November. Done a whopping 200. That's the big day. 130 today, and the rest kind of scattered on Wednesday. Pretty much most of that opening, obviously, we're not sure about today's paper. So 21 even calls here in everyone's favorite Class 3 milk. All right, everybody, that music means we've come to the end of another fun sojourn through the world of all things futures, options. Martin, I appreciate you taking some time out of your day to join us here on TWIFO to give us the lowdown on everything event contract. But before we go, we always like to leave our audience wanting more. So if you have any fun hints or teases, I know you can't break any new products, but if you want to leave our audience maybe mulling over what could be coming down the pike, feel free to leave them with some teases. And also, if they want to learn more about these event contracts and where they can trade them, where should they go? What should they do, Mark?
Awesome. Yeah, I appreciate you letting me wrap up. So, what's next for Ninja Trader? And as I mentioned, I'm not here to break anything, but I'll go as far as I can. Is that fair?
Fair enough, sir. Have at it.
All right. So what you can expect from Ninja Trader, as always, is continued hyper focus on serving the active retail futures trader. That's where we've been for a very, very long time. And in doing so, there's two kind of things that we think a lot about. Continuing to facilitate exchange innovation, whether it's size innovation, whether it's product innovation, whether it's exchange contracts. What I can say is this is early innings for where futures is going. So people should continue to watch this, to listen to the show. People should continue to pay attention to futures. This is not a short-term phenomenon. This is going to be something that is going to take years to evolve. And these product complexes are going to continue to change and become extremely exciting. And that's what I can share over time. Hopefully I'm on the show talking about more products. So there's more coming. And the other thing I'd say that you can expect from Ninja Trader is the continued unification with Tradevate and the technology they bring to the table. So as we continue to merge our technologies, you're going to see a lot of new products, a lot of focus on customer experiences and different ways to make everything from onboarding to funding to service be kind of front and center for Ninja Trader, Tradevate, and really our continued focus on our customers. So there's more there relative to that unification of Ninja Trader and Tradevate, which we're super excited about. So stay tuned for more.
And Martin, if folks want to learn more about all things Ninja Trader or Tradevate, where should they go? What should they do?
Real easy, ninjatrader.com and tradevate.com. Come find us.
There you go. Check them out, listeners, ninjatrader.com. Give them a follow on Twitter while you're at it as well, at Ninja Trader, all one word. You know where to go to check out more and learn more about all these reports we're talking about here every week on the show. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO, TWIFO. I'll get you to our This Week in Futures Options reports. You can sink your teeth deep into any product complex that tickles your fancy. If you want to check Class 3 milk at 2 a.m. on a Sunday, no one's going to judge you. Those reports are running. They're live all the time. They're updated continuously for you folks over there, just because we like you. CMEgroup.com/TWIFO. And of course, you know where to go to learn more about all things small caps. FTSERussell.com, FTSE Russell.com. In fact, those folks will be joining us on the show soon in the FTSE Russell hot seat to break down some interesting developments they have cooking out there as well. In the meantime, of course, give them a follow on Twitter while you're at it as well, at FTSE Russell, all one word. That's going to do it for us on the network today. But don't worry, back again tomorrow, noon Central, 1 p.m. Eastern for volatility views. And then after that, for all of you pro folks, coming back at you with our weekly dose of unusual activity and some fun live trading. It's Options Oddities. And we're back again, kicking things off next week with the option block all the way through to next Thursday and another episode of This Week in Futures Options. Stay safe out there, everybody.
This Week in Futures Options is brought to you by CME Group, the world's leading and most diverse futures and options exchange. CME Group's markets help individuals and businesses around the world manage risks and seize opportunities. CME Group offers the deepest and most liquid options on futures across all asset classes, including interest rates, equity indexes, foreign exchange, energy, agriculture, and metals. For more information and educational resources about futures options at CME Group, visit cmegroup.com/options. This Week in Futures Options is also brought to you by FTSE Russell, a leading global provider of benchmarks, analytics, and data solutions. Investors in the U.S. and around the world are using FTSE Russell indexes to benchmark their investment performance and create investment funds, ETFs, structured products, and index-based derivatives. Many Options Insider Radio Network listeners will be familiar with the Russell 2000 Index. Russell 2000 futures and options are currently trading on the Chicago Board Options Exchange and CME Group. For more information, please visit ftserussell.com, cboe.com, and cmegroup.com. This broadcast is intended for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute trading advice or the solicitation of purchases or sale of any futures or options. The rulebook of the applicable exchange should be consulted as the authoritative source on all current contract specifications. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.